give you a minute, Mr. Kasakian. Ready?
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call to order the special meeting of the Glendale City Council for January 17th. Roll call, please.
Council members Garpetian,
Here.
Najarian, here. Sinanian, Mayor Devine.
Here.
The agenda for the January 17, 2017 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on Thursday, January 12, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. There's one item for closed session, conference with legal counsel pending litigation, City of Glendale versus Arnold Dabtian, LASC case number EC 065863. And item before you today for the open session is City Attorney regarding arguments for and against charter amendment measure relating to term limits. 2A is motion approving argument in favor of term limits. After you hear that item, you will adjourn to the closed session.
Okay, Mr. Garcia.
Madam Mayor, members of council, in December, the council placed the matter on the ballot for the April election to impose term limits, or to put a ballot measure to amend the charter that would impose term limits, 3 terms. So at the same time, the council also called for arguments for and against the measure. The council at that time indicated that they wanted to sign the ballot measure for that measure, and nobody submitted a request to oppose the ballot measure. So there will be an argument in favor. There will be a city attorney and partial analysis, but there will be no argument against. So that's the report. The item before you is to approve the ballot argument in favor of term limits as the council members, and from there, this will be before the voters in April. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Too bad it's not like a regular election of a council member where you don't have any you know, and you could just say, well, we're just going to do it this way. But unfortunately, we have to put it on the ballot and give people a chance to vote for it. Roll call. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Yeah.
Well, this is a closed
Is it a motion?
No, this is
the closed
This
session
is
after.
open. This is open.
This is open session. Item 2.
Yeah, item.
May I ask a question? Is it required that we prepare an argument in favor?
Is it required? No.
Councilmember, you're
Sorry. The question was, is it required that we prepare one in favor, seeing as there is not an argument against?
It's certainly, well, I will say this. The council directed the preparation of a ballot argument in favor for the council members to approve. So it's up to individual council members to say whether or not they want to ultimately sign on to that ballot argument for. If all of you say you don't want to sign on to it, then that's you're right. But even if there's no motion to approve this, since you designate yourselves to sign the ballot argument, any of the sitting council members can sign that ballot argument.
And since there is no argument against it, I mean, doesn't it look a little bit funny if you have only argument for it and nothing against it?
In my view, no. There's nothing inappropriate or.
What's the deadline for this?
The deadline to submit has passed. The deadline to sign the argument is the 27th of January.
So there will be an argument regardless of who signs it, or if it's signed or not?
As long as any council member agrees to sign it, there will be a ballot argument for. And there will not be a ballot argument against, because that deadline to make a request to write the ballot argument has passed.
Well, I'm just, my only reluctance is to appear to be an overbearing council, and especially when there's no opposition to it. I know there are still some members of the community that see the value in seasoned and tenured council members. Stop laughing, Mr. City Manager. So, I mean, I think the item is pretty self-explanatory. So, I mean, my thought is that the title of the proposition is fairly self-explanatory, although there may be some nuances into how it's applied. Let's just throw it to the voters. I mean, that was my when I voted for this, it was to not necessarily support term limits, but to support the idea of giving it to the voters and to hear them, to hear their input.
So I would say to that, then there's a couple of ways the council can approve the motion, or the council can just let the motion not pass, and then individual council members because you all appointed yourselves to write the argument. So at that point, then individual council members can say, yes, I would like to sign on to the argument, or no, I would not like to sign on to the argument.
And is that something that has to be done here, or
that
can
part
we
you can
just
just
let
let us
this?
know
We can let
individually.
this kind of
Right.
drop here and fail,
Yeah.
more or
And
less.
we'll send, well, again, just send the argument out to you, and you can let us know whether or not you want to put your name to it.
Mr. Councilmember Najarian, how do you feel about that?
I think that's probably a reasonable, with regard to my position, I think it's a reasonable compromise, so. So is it possible, I'm sorry then, is it possible to have an argument with no signatories to it?
No, at least somebody would have to sign it.
Someone
So,
would have to
yeah.
sign it.
So there's
Someone
one-
from the council.
One of the four, because that's who you appointed, the four council members.
If one of the four signs it, there would be an argument.
Correct.
Well, let's read the argument. You may convince me to,
It's in the packet. I can read it for you if you want. It's Exhibit A.
No. He's going too far.
It's in the
It's right.
special meeting.
oh, I see,
Special.
Here.
I see. Thank you. Term limits will create more competitive elections, encourage more people to run for office, and give voters a wider choice of who they can select. 12 years is enough time for an individual council member to make his mark on the city. Term limits will place new experience, ideas, and thinking on the council. Term limits will also help to encourage good government decision versus governing to win the next election.
And we put that together based on the comments that were made from the dais on the night that you put this on the ballot. So that's all. We have no pride of authorship. We just did our best to hear the
I mean,
the issues that were
Reiterated
put
what
forward
was said.
and put them into the.
I mean, these are almost arguments to vote against an incumbent who may be on the ballot on the next page or actually on the same page. So that's, I mean, that's just an observation at this point. I know these were the arguments.
Right, yeah.
We actually, when we first looked at this, we took other drafts from other term limit measures, and they were much, much more strident than that, as you
Really?
might imagine.
Well, I just think this is a ballot measure and argument for the community to decide on. I think the council decided unanimously to put this on the ballot, and I'm in agreement that we should have the argument there, so.
And I would just
Leave
note,
it up
you're signing, we put it because it was majority of you, it's not clear if we should have had you each make comments individually to us or just bring to you as a whole. But it's obviously within each council member's personal choice whether to ultimately sign on to that argument. So if you want, we can just leave it as is, and then you can.
I mean, you see the awkwardness of signing it, encouraging,
Yes, sir.
throwing out the old wood, and I'm the only old wood on the council here, I guess.
No, let me
right
just make
But
another
it's
comment.
kind of interesting.
I think the first item, it says term limits will create more competitive elections, encourage more people to run. We have 15 people running. How much more encouraging can you be? I mean, you want to have 30 people? I mean, people who want to run,
the
who decide
argument
to
to
run, they
that-
will run. But
Not to get into the debate, but I think the argument on that will be, you see that more often than not when you have an open seat, as we do in this current election.
well, yes and
Although
no.
that's not been universally true in Glendale's
Right.
case.
I mean, I want this language to be that to reflect the council's decision. I mean, it wasn't just because we want to encourage 30 people run, or we want to give people the opportunity to run. And I think term limits are fine when you serve 3 terms and you give the seat to somebody new. But the way it's written is like nobody's running because we don't have term limits. It's kind of awkward. And also it says 12 years is enough for. I mean, it's just a campaign slogan against maybe an incumbent.
Yeah.
You know,
And to a certain
I'm
extent-
telling you, it's not affecting me in any shape, form, or way. But when I read this thing, it says, yeah, this is right. 12 years is right. I mean,
You want to get rid of me now?
Yeah, great.
no. I'm saying when people read this, they would say, oh,
We can-
yeah,
we can
12
take-
years
if
is
you want
enough.
to give us some
That's not the
comments, and we
intention.
can
I
bring it
mean,
back next week or not, and decide from there. We tried to, knowing that council members would be signing it, but trying not to have it too much advocacy, we actually toned it down from some of the other drafts we saw from other cities. But we're happy to, I think we can pare it down even more and make it a little bit more, almost like a partial analysis.
It should say that the council is giving the voters the opportunity to make that decision. And the reason behind it was because we thought 3 years, in 3 terms is sufficient, or what have you. Not, the way it's written is kind of like a campaign slogan for.
Well, if I can just interject, speaking from my English teaching background, I think the verbiage could have been a little bit different on this. It almost sounds elementary to me when I read it. And so I think it can be a little bit more sophisticated language, I don't know, the President of the United States serves only, 2 terms or something, it just
Yeah, but
seems
the
like it
Congress
could be a
doesn't.
little bit more.
Okay, we'll take another crack at it.
I'd be happy if you just eliminated the bullet
Eliminate.
points
Yeah, okay.
and had
It's
the
more about giving the
introduction.
voters the opportunity to decide whether or
I
not
mean,
they
that's
Exactly, yes.
every
Okay.
ballot
Yes.
that every measure that we put on the ballot for people
Yeah,
to vote is to give them the option. Nobody came to us and said we want term limits tomorrow. We did this on our own.
Oh, I understand.
So we want to give people the voters the opportunity to decide, and that's it. And we thought that's the right thing to do, to give them the opportunity to decide. But it wasn't that they were lining up here and banging our doors for.
Except for Mr. Mohill.
Well, don't.
No, understood.
Don't
We'll pull
underestimate
the
Mr.
item
Moyle, but-
and follow up.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, so we will now adjourn to closed session. Mr. Garcia, do you expect to report out on any of the items?
As we recess to closed session, no, I don't think we'll
Okay,
report
we'll
on that.
recess. We'll recess to closed session. Thank you.
Thank you.